Do you feel a deep yearning to understand life's true purpose, to seek something more than just the fleeting pleasures of this world? The teachings of the Dalai Lama on the three principal aspects of the path can serve as a beacon for anyone yearning for a deeper, more meaningful existence. These teachings, Renunciation, Bodhicitta, and the Wisdom of Emptiness, are the heart of Tibetan Buddhism and offer a profound guide on the journey to enlightenment. Imagine a path where every step is taken not just for yourself, but for the good of all beings. Let's delve into these aspects and see how they can transform our lives. Join our journey of self-discovery and enlightenment. Subscribe now for more wisdom on the three principal aspects of the path. 1. Renunciation. Renunciation. What comes to your mind when you hear this word? Do you imagine giving up all your possessions and retreating into solitude? Well, the Dalai Lama teaches that true renunciation is not about living without worldly goods, but rather about changing how we relate to them. It's about recognizing that all external pursuits are ultimately temporary, and finding the courage to let go of our attachments to them. Have you ever noticed how even the things we work so hard for, the big promotion, the dream vacation, the perfect relationship, can sometimes leave us feeling empty once we have them? Renunciation invites us to see this clearly and to seek a kind of happiness that's unshakable, no matter what happens. Renunciation is a journey that requires deep introspection. It is about confronting our fears, our insecurities, and our attachments. Often, we find ourselves caught up in the pursuit of things that society tells us will make us happy: money, status, relationships. We are conditioned to believe that these external factors are the key to our fulfillment. But when we look deeply, we begin to realize that these pursuits, while not inherently wrong, are not the source of lasting happiness. True renunciation is the inner realization that happiness cannot be found in possessions, achievements, or even relationships. It is the understanding that everything in this world is impermanent, and that clinging to the impermanent will inevitably lead to suffering. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of shifting our focus from external achievements to inner peace. Imagine a life where your sense of well-being is not dependent on the ever-changing circumstances of the world around you. This is the promise of renunciation, a promise of freedom, of lightness, of unshakable joy. It is not about rejecting the world, but about embracing it with a new perspective. When we let go of our attachments, we are able to engage with life more fully, more lovingly, and more compassionately. We are no longer weighed down by the fear of loss or the anxiety of not having enough. Instead, we are free to experience the beauty of each moment, to appreciate the simple joys of life, and to connect with others in a deeper, more meaningful way. True renunciation is an act of love, both for ourselves and for others. It's about freeing ourselves from suffering so that we can be of genuine help to those around us. The Dalai Lama reminds us that our attachment to temporary comforts and fleeting joys keeps us bound to the cycle of suffering, the cycle of samsara. To truly be at peace, we must turn inward and let go, recognizing that lasting happiness comes from cultivating our inner world, not from clinging to external circumstances. What if we could let go of the things that weigh us down, not as a loss, but as a liberation? Renunciation also involves a profound understanding of the nature of suffering. The Buddha taught that life is characterized by dukkha, often translated as suffering or dissatisfaction. This suffering is not just the obvious pain of illness, loss, or disappointment, it is the subtle, pervasive dissatisfaction that underlies even our happiest moments. It is the sense that something is always missing, that there is always something more we need in order to be truly happy. Renunciation is the determination to be free from this cycle of dissatisfaction. It is the courage to face the truth of our situation and to seek a deeper, more lasting happiness. Renunciation is not about giving up joy, it is about finding a deeper joy that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is about discovering the kind of happiness that is not subject to the whims of fortune or the inevitable changes of life. The Dalai Lama often encourages us to reflect on our lives and to ask ourselves, what truly brings us lasting happiness? Is it the accumulation of material possessions, or is it something deeper, something that comes from within? Renunciation is about turning our focus inward and discovering the peace and contentment that can only be found within ourselves. This process of renunciation requires us to confront our attachments head-on. We must look honestly at the things we cling to, whether it be material wealth, relationships, status, or even our own ideas about who we are. It is not easy to let go of these attachments, but it is necessary if we are to find true freedom. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of mindfulness in this process. By being mindful of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we can begin to see the ways in which we are attached, and we can begin to loosen our grip. This does not mean that we must give up everything we love, rather, it means that we must change the way we relate to these things. We must learn to appreciate them without becoming attached, to enjoy them without clinging, and to let go when the time comes. Renunciation also involves cultivating a sense of contentment. In our modern world, we are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us we need more money, more success, more possessions. We are led to believe that happiness lies just around the corner, that if we can just achieve that one thing, we will finally be happy. But this is an illusion. True happiness is not found in acquiring more, it is found in being content with what we have. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of gratitude in cultivating contentment. When we are grateful for what we have, we are less likely to feel the need for more. We begin to see that we already have enough, and that true happiness comes not from getting more, but from appreciating what we have. Renunciation, then, is not about deprivation, it is about liberation. It is about freeing ourselves from the endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, and finding a deeper, more lasting peace. It is about letting go of the things that keep us bound, so that we can experience the true freedom that comes from within. The Dalai Lama often reminds us that renunciation is not a one-time event, it is an ongoing process. It is something that we must cultivate every day, through mindfulness, reflection, and the practice of letting go. And as we do, we find that we are able to live more fully, more joyfully, and more compassionately. 2. Bodhicitta. Have you ever felt a moment of deep empathy for someone else's pain, where you wished with all your heart that you could take away their suffering? That feeling is a glimpse of Bodhicitta, the second principal aspect of the path. Bodhicitta, often called the mind of enlightenment, is the wish to attain enlightenment not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings. It's that spark of altruism, that deep motivation to help others, that transforms our spiritual journey into something far greater. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that cultivating Bodhicitta is like opening our hearts to the entire universe. Imagine seeing everyone, every stranger, every friend, even every enemy, as someone who, deep down, just wants to be happy. Bodhicitta is not about becoming a saint overnight, it's about taking small steps every day to be kinder, to be more patient, to give more than we take. It's about realizing that the more we care for others, the more we break free from the narrow confines of our own self-centeredness. And isn't there something incredibly liberating about that? Bodhicitta is the heart of Mahayana Buddhism. It is what makes the Mahayana path unique, the commitment to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. This commitment is not something that can be forced or artificially created, it arises naturally from a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all life. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of seeing others as just like ourselves, wanting happiness, wanting to avoid suffering. When we truly understand this, compassion arises naturally. We begin to see that our happiness is not separate from the happiness of others, and that our well-being is intimately connected with the well-being of all beings. One powerful practice that the Dalai Lama often recommends is Tonglen, taking in the suffering of others and sending out love and compassion. Imagine breathing in someone else's pain and breathing out warmth and peace. This practice might seem counterintuitive, but it's a beautiful way to expand our capacity for love. It reminds us that we're not separate from one another, our joy and suffering are all interconnected. What if we could make our hearts so vast that there was room for the entire world within them? Bodhicitta can be cultivated in two ways: relative Bodhicitta and ultimate Bodhicitta. Relative Bodhicitta is the compassion we feel for others and the aspiration to help them. It is the desire to alleviate the suffering of all beings and to bring them happiness. This kind of Bodhicitta can be cultivated through practices such as loving-kindness meditation, where we systematically extend our love and compassion to all beings, starting with ourselves, then extending to our loved ones, to neutral people, and finally to those we find difficult. Loving-kindness meditation is a powerful way to open our hearts and cultivate compassion. It involves silently repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease." After cultivating these feelings towards ourselves, we then extend these wishes to others. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. We extend these wishes first to our loved ones, then to neutral people, and finally to those we find difficult. This practice helps us to break down the barriers that separate us from others and to see everyone as deserving of love and compassion. Another practice that can help cultivate relative Bodhicitta is the practice of empathy. Empathy is the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to feel what they are feeling, and to understand their experience. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of empathy in developing compassion. When we truly understand the suffering of others, we are naturally moved to help. Empathy helps us to see that we are not separate from others, that their suffering is our suffering, and that their happiness is our happiness. It helps us to break down the walls of self-centeredness and to open our hearts to the world. Ultimate Bodhicitta, on the other hand, is the wisdom that understands the true nature of reality. It is the realization that all phenomena, including ourselves and others, are empty of inherent existence. This understanding of emptiness is what allows us to truly help others, because it frees us from the attachments and aversions that keep us bound to the cycle of suffering. The Dalai Lama often teaches that compassion and wisdom must go hand in hand. Without wisdom, our compassion can become limited or misguided. Without compassion, our wisdom can become cold and detached. True Bodhicitta is the union of these two, the deep wish to help others, combined with the profound understanding of the nature of reality. Ultimate Bodhicitta involves understanding that our sense of self, and the sense of others as separate entities, is an illusion. It is the realization that all beings are interconnected, and that our true nature is not separate from the nature of others. When we understand this, our compassion becomes limitless. We no longer see ourselves as separate from others, and we no longer see their suffering as separate from our own. This realization allows us to help others without attachment, without expectation, and without fear. It allows us to engage with the world in a way that is both compassionate and wise. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of meditation in cultivating Bodhicitta. Meditation allows us to quiet the mind and to look deeply into the nature of our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. Through meditation, we can begin to see the ways in which we are attached to our own happiness and how this attachment creates suffering. We can also begin to see the ways in which we are interconnected with others, and how our happiness is bound up with the happiness of all beings. Meditation helps us to cultivate both the compassion and the wisdom that are necessary for Bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is not just an abstract concept, it is something that we can cultivate in our daily lives. Every day, we have countless opportunities to practice compassion. Whether it is offering a kind word to someone who is struggling, listening with an open heart to someone who is in pain, or simply smiling at a stranger, we can find ways to cultivate Bodhicitta in everything we do. The Dalai Lama often reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can make a difference. When we cultivate Bodhicitta, we are not only transforming our own hearts, but we are also contributing to the happiness and well-being of the world. 3. Wisdom of Emptiness. Finally, we come to the wisdom of emptiness. This is perhaps the most challenging aspect to grasp, yet it holds the key to our liberation. The wisdom of emptiness teaches us that nothing exists in isolation, everything arises in dependence on everything else. There's no fixed, permanent self, only a fluid interplay of conditions and relationships. It's a radical thought, isn't it? That the self we hold onto so tightly is not a fixed entity, but more like a wave in the ocean, unique, yet inseparable from the whole. The Dalai Lama encourages us to explore the nature of reality with an open mind. He's not asking us to deny our existence, but to see through the illusions that keep us bound to suffering, the illusion that we are separate, that we must protect me at all costs, that the world is black and white. By understanding emptiness, we can begin to loosen the grip of fear, anger, and attachment. Imagine living with the understanding that everything is interconnected, that we are all part of one vast, dynamic tapestry. How would that change the way you see yourself and others? The concept of emptiness, or shunyata, is one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism. It is the understanding that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. This does not mean that nothing exists, but rather that things do not exist in the way we ordinarily perceive them. We tend to see the world in terms of solid, independent entities. This is me, that is you, this is mine, that is yours. But when we look more deeply, we see that everything is interdependent, that nothing exists in isolation. The Dalai Lama often uses the example of a flower. A flower does not exist on its own, it depends on the seed, the soil, the water, the sun, the air, and countless other conditions. Without these, there would be no flower. In the same way, our sense of self is not something fixed or independent, it arises in dependence on countless causes and conditions. Understanding emptiness helps us to let go of our attachments and aversions. When we see that the things we cling to do not have an independent, permanent existence, our attachment to them begins to dissolve. When we see that the things we fear or dislike are also empty, our aversion begins to lessen. This does not mean that we become indifferent or detached in a cold way. On the contrary, understanding emptiness allows us to engage with the world more fully, more openly, and more lovingly. We see that we are not separate from others, that their suffering is our suffering, and their joy is our joy. This understanding is the basis for true compassion. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes that the wisdom of emptiness is not about intellectual understanding alone, it is about direct experience. It is one thing to understand the concept of emptiness on an intellectual level, but it is another thing entirely to experience it directly. Meditation is the key to this direct experience. Through meditation, we can begin to see the ways in which our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are all interconnected, and how they arise and pass away in dependence on countless causes and conditions. We can begin to see the ways in which our sense of self is constructed, and how it is not as solid or permanent as we often believe. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of the Madhyamaka teachings, particularly those of the great Indian master Nagarjuna, in understanding emptiness. Nagarjuna's teachings on dependent origination show us that all phenomena arise in dependence on other factors, and therefore have no independent, inherent existence. This understanding is crucial for breaking the chains of ignorance and delusion that keep us bound to the cycle of suffering. When we see that everything is interconnected, that nothing exists on its own, we begin to see through the illusions that keep us bound to suffering. We begin to see that our attachments and aversions are based on misconceptions about the nature of reality, and we can begin to let them go. The realization of emptiness is not about nihilism or believing that nothing exists. It is about seeing things as they truly are, without the overlay of our preconceived notions and attachments. It is about seeing the fluid, interconnected nature of reality, and understanding that our sense of self is not something fixed or separate, but something that arises in dependence on countless causes and conditions. This realization allows us to live with greater freedom, to engage with the world without attachment, and to help others without ego. It allows us to see that we are not separate from others, and that our true nature is one of openness, compassion, and wisdom. Integration of the three aspects. These three aspects, renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom, are not separate paths, but rather threads that weave together to form a complete journey. Renunciation frees us from the illusion that worldly things can bring us lasting happiness, allowing us to develop bodhicitta and open our hearts to others. The wisdom of emptiness then cuts through our misconceptions, enabling us to love without attachment and to serve without ego. The Dalai Lama's teachings are not just philosophy, they're a practical guide to living a life of freedom, compassion, and joy. Renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness are deeply interconnected. Renunciation provides the foundation for bodhicitta by freeing us from the attachments that keep us focused on our own happiness. When we let go of our attachments, we create space in our hearts for others. Bodhicitta then motivates us to pursue the path of enlightenment, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of all beings. And the wisdom of emptiness allows us to see through the illusions that keep us bound to the cycle of suffering, enabling us to help others without attachment or ego. Together, these three aspects form a complete and balanced path, a path of wisdom, compassion, and freedom. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes that these teachings are not just for monks or spiritual practitioners, they are for everyone. We all experience suffering, we all want to be happy, and we all have the capacity for wisdom and compassion. By cultivating renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness, we can transform our lives, free ourselves from suffering, and contribute to the happiness and well-being of others. This is not an easy path, but it is a path that leads to true and lasting happiness. It is a path that allows us to live with an open heart, to engage with the world in a meaningful way, and to find peace and joy in the midst of life's challenges. The integration of these three aspects is what makes the path to enlightenment complete. Renunciation provides the foundation, bodhicitta provides the motivation, and the wisdom of emptiness provides the insight. Without any one of these, the path would be incomplete. Renunciation without bodhicitta can lead to a cold detachment, where we become indifferent to the suffering of others. Bodhicitta without renunciation can lead to burnout, where we are overwhelmed by the suffering of the world without the inner resources to deal with it. And without the wisdom of emptiness, our compassion can become limited, and our renunciation can become rigid. Together, these three aspects create a balanced and integrated path that leads to true freedom. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of daily practice in integrating these three aspects. Renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness are not just ideas to be understood, they are qualities to be cultivated through practice. Meditation, reflection, and mindful living are all essential components of this practice. Through meditation, we can cultivate the mindfulness and insight needed to see through our attachments and to develop the wisdom of emptiness. Through reflection, we can cultivate the compassion and motivation of bodhicitta. And through mindful living, we can bring these qualities into our daily lives, transforming the way we relate to ourselves, others, and the world. The path of the three principal aspects is a journey of transformation. It is a journey from suffering to freedom, from self-centeredness to compassion, and from ignorance to wisdom. It is a journey that requires courage, perseverance, and an open heart. The Dalai Lama often reminds us that this journey is not about perfection, it is about progress. It is about taking one step at a time, with kindness and patience, both towards ourselves and towards others. It is about recognizing that we are all on this journey together, and that by helping others, we are also helping ourselves. Conclusion. Ultimately, the Dalai Lama's message is simple yet profound. The path to enlightenment is a journey of the heart and the mind, requiring both compassion and wisdom. By embracing renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness, we take a step closer to our true nature, a nature that is wise, loving, and inherently free. What if, by transforming ourselves, we could also transform the world around us? This is the promise of the three principal aspects of the path, a journey not just for our own liberation, but for the liberation of all beings. Are you ready to take that step? The teachings on the three principal aspects of the path offer a comprehensive framework for anyone seeking spiritual growth. Through renunciation, we recognize the transient and unsatisfactory nature of worldly existence and turn towards the pursuit of true happiness. Through Bodhicitta, we expand our motivation to encompass the well-being of all beings, developing a compassionate heart that seeks to alleviate the suffering of others. Finally, through the wisdom of emptiness, we perceive the true nature of reality, freeing ourselves from the chains of ignorance and attachment. The journey is not without its challenges. Renunciation requires us to confront our deepest attachments and fears. Bodhicitta asks us to open our hearts to the suffering of all beings, even those we find difficult to love. The wisdom of emptiness challenges our most deeply held beliefs about the nature of reality. But the rewards of this journey are immense. By following this path, we can find a happiness that is not dependent on external circumstances, a peace that cannot be shaken by the ups and downs of life, and a love that embraces all beings without exception. Dalai Lama's message is clear: the path to enlightenment is a journey of both the heart and the mind, requiring the integration of compassion, insight, and a profound desire for freedom. By embodying these three aspects, practitioners are not only working towards their own liberation but are also contributing to the peace and happiness of the entire world. Imagine a world where more and more people are guided by compassion, wisdom, and a desire to help others. What kind of world would that be? This is the vision that the Dalai Lama offers us, a vision of a world transformed by the power of love and understanding. Are you ready to be part of that transformation? The path of renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom is not a linear journey, but a dynamic and evolving process. Each aspect reinforces the others, creating a spiral of growth that takes us deeper into the heart of our own being. As we cultivate renunciation, we become less attached to our own desires, which allows us to open our hearts to others. As we cultivate bodhicitta, we develop the motivation to help others, which inspires us to deepen our understanding of the wisdom of emptiness. And as we cultivate the wisdom of emptiness, we see through the illusions that keep us bound to suffering, which allows us to let go of our attachments and develop true renunciation. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes the importance of patience on this journey. Spiritual growth is not something that happens overnight. It is a gradual process that requires time, effort, and perseverance. There will be times when we feel discouraged, when our progress seems slow, or when we encounter obstacles that seem insurmountable. But the Dalai Lama reminds us that every step we take on this path, no matter how small, is a step towards freedom. Every moment of mindfulness, every act of kindness, every effort to understand the nature of reality, brings us closer to our true nature. The three principal aspects of the path are not just teachings to be studied, they are practices to be lived. They are qualities that we can cultivate in our daily lives, in our relationships, and in our interactions with the world. Renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness are not abstract concepts, they are lived experiences that transform the way we see ourselves, others, and the world. They are the foundation of a life that is meaningful, purposeful, and filled with love and compassion. Imagine a world where more and more people are guided by these principles. Imagine a world where people are less attached to their own desires, more motivated by the well-being of others, and more deeply connected to the true nature of reality. This is the vision that the Dalai Lama offers us, a vision of a world transformed by the power of love, compassion, and wisdom. It is a vision of a world where suffering is alleviated, where peace and happiness are attainable, and where all beings can experience the true joy that comes from living in alignment with our deepest nature. Are you ready to take the first step on this journey? Are you ready to cultivate renunciation, to open your heart to the suffering of all beings, and to see through the illusions that keep you bound to suffering? The path is not easy, but it is a path that leads to true and lasting happiness. It is a path that leads to freedom, to love, and to the realization of our true nature. The Dalai Lama invites us all to embark on this journey, to transform ourselves, and to contribute to the transformation of the world. The question is, are you ready? The teachings of the Dalai Lama on the three principal aspects of the path offer us a roadmap to a life that is rich with meaning, purpose, and joy. They offer us a way to navigate the challenges of life with grace, wisdom, and compassion. They offer us a way to live in alignment with our deepest values and to contribute to the well-being of all beings. By embracing renunciation, Bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness, we can transform our own lives and contribute to the creation of a more compassionate and peaceful world. The journey of the three principal aspects is a journey that we can all undertake, regardless of our background, our beliefs, or our circumstances. It is a journey that requires courage, commitment, and an open heart. It is a journey that asks us to look deeply into our own hearts, to confront our own attachments and fears, and to cultivate the qualities of compassion, wisdom, and love. And it is a journey that offers us the greatest reward of all, the realization of our true nature and the ability to contribute to the happiness and well-being of all beings. So, are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to embark on the journey of the three principal aspects of the path? The Dalai Lama offers us his teachings, his guidance, and his encouragement. The path is before us, the journey is ours to take, and the reward is beyond measure. Let us walk this path together, with open hearts, with clear minds, and with the determination to make a difference in our own lives and in the lives of others. Let us embrace renunciation, cultivate Bodhicitta, and realize the wisdom of emptiness. Let us transform ourselves, and in doing so, contribute to the transformation of the world. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know peace and joy. This is the aspiration of Bodhicitta, the wisdom of renunciation, and the realization of emptiness. This is the path that the Dalai Lama invites us to walk. Are you ready to take the first step?